part of for the sunset drive. It rained, yay! And it's celebration with the buffalo. We had a huge storm this afternoon, and so good evening, good evening, I should say. Good day to those of you who are just starting out, wherever you are in the world. I'm Stefan Vincible, and you are with us here at Djuma Private Game Reserve. We're very close to Vuyatela Lodge, actually. Didn't even know that this many buffalo had come through, to be quite honest. That's how hard the rain was. And now we are in and amongst probably around about 300 or 400 buffalo. This is the Cape buffalo, or the Plains buffalo. Not quite as big as the North American buffaloes in the world. Ooh, oh no, it's just an old lady. I thought that she had an injury on her back, but not quite. We're slowly pushing our way through. Hello. We're slowly pushing our way through this herd. We're eliciting quite a lot of response from them, to be quite honest. They're taking an intense interest in us, and I've got a funny feeling it's because we've got our raincoat on. And it's something that they haven't seen before. All of you that thought that buffalo were just dumb cows, I have something to tell you, a secret to share with you. Buffalo are about as close to the domestic cow as what a timber wolf is to a German shepherd. They share certain similarities, but that's about where it stops. Buffalo are in actual fact quite socially organized, and they are absolutely intelligent. I have no doubt as to the intelligence of buffalo. They formed coordinated movements. They have societies within the herd. They vote, can you believe it or not, on the direction that the herd is going to be going on that day. There's designated individuals that perform certain tasks, and as sophisticated as pathfinding. Each society, which is made up mainly of just a single family, has designated protectors and a pathfinder. Now, Brian, there's some buffalo drinking out of the celebration that we have today. As you can see from the clouds that we got going on around us, as well as the rain puddles that are around, we had a decent storm. Probably rained and was really quite hard for about 30 or 40 minutes. Came down at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. We almost didn't think we were going to go out today, but then true to form, the Lowveld, or this particular part of the Kruger National Park, the sky pulls open to the most brilliantly washed blue, towering clouds around us. And it looks like that's that for this afternoon's rain. These buffalo just enjoying the very clean water, having a bit of a wrestle and a tussle there in the background. That's something that quite common amongst buffaloes, for them to wrestle horns or lock horns with one another and to wrestle. Those are, looks like two youngsters. It doesn't look like anything serious going on over there. Let's hope they're not inescapably locked with one another. I've never seen buffalo with locked horns. I've seen kudu with locked horns before, but never buffalo. Now, I'm on camera this afternoon with Brian. There is Jamie is out with VM, and we have Geraldine and Kirsty in final control today. And our camp is sopping wet and bucketed down. We're all standing in our doorways with these big beaming smiles on our faces, enjoying the cool air blowing around. Buffalo drinking this puddle absolutely dry. And we've had a first question come through this afternoon from Wingnut. Who asked, would the grass green up after this little bit of rain? To be quite honest with you, Wingnut, Yes, it will, but not to the degree that we think it's going to green up. Let's have a look at those. They've got their horns properly locked with one another, hey? That's quite bizarre. I've never seen that before, and I actually wonder if they're not properly locked with one another. Let's see if they can get themselves out of there. It's going to require one to go forward and one to go backwards. This is a first for me, folks. 17 years, I've never seen buffalo locked like that together. They're properly stuck, actually. The buffalo at the top needs to walk forward to get his horns unlocked. But of course, he's wanting to pull because he's feeling the pressure from the other buffalo. Almost out. Come on. Go forward. There we go. Oh, no, not even. There we go. Out. Gee whiz. Two young males. Yeah. If they couldn't get undone, they absolutely would have been lion prey. Now, there were 400 buffalo around us literally 3 minutes ago. Have a look at the bush surrounding this car. They've completely disappeared, barring these two. Even the one that was drinking out of the puddle has managed to disappear into the savannah next to us. So back to the grass greening question, it absolutely will green up, but because it's so dry at the moment, the earth just literally sucked that little bit of water up, and I have no doubt that literally this deep into the ground, it's completely bone dry. It didn't rain that much. It rained, but not that much. As you can see, the rain literally let up probably close to 45 minutes ago to an hour, and there's not a standing puddle. There was these few little puddles on the road, and that's about it. It's going to need to rain for a lot longer before we get any standing puddles or any running water of any sort, meaningful running water. To give you an idea, we have between 400 and 600 milliliters of rain per year here, which is about that much rain per year. It can sometimes go to, let me just get that scale, that much, about 1.2 meters. So just over 3 feet, probably about 4 feet of rain per year. It can get to that. On exceptionally high rainfall years, we've had up to 1.5 meters of rain, which is 4.5 feet of rain. Have a look at the lion, or a lion has gotten hold of this female over here. Those are claw marks, that's what you're looking at. She's been clawed on her back. And I just want to see the condition of that wound. These animals are unbelievably tough. Yeah, that's a bite mark. So what's happened is the lion's clawed on and then is bitten. So those claw marks would have been from the front claws, and then the bite mark was over the top of the spine to try and collapse the hips of the buffalo to get it to stop running. And what probably happened is, because this buffalo was with the rest of the herd, the rest of the herd came to their rescue. And there's usually quite a big fight that goes on with buffalo and lion. I know these Birmingham boys have been proving us wrong by just literally killing every buffalo they come across, sometimes multiple in one night. But generally speaking, some buffalo in a herd will be carrying scars like that. It's just testimony to their cohesiveness, the herd mentality. Levi has noticed that these buffalo all have the most impressive horns, and just to answer your question, their horns start to grow fairly soon after birth, and obviously female and male horns grow throughout their life. Male horns getting a little bit bigger and getting that pronounced boss. Now I'm going to try and find you a youngster. This is a youngster right here. You can see this buffalo has just gone on a year old from now. You'll see him coming out. You can see the horns look fairly big, but they're not really. And then you've got females This is a young male. Let's go over to this one on the left over here. This is a young male. He's probably 3 to 5 years old, somewhere around there. You can see that his horns, although big, don't look overly large. He's got horns very similar to a female. Let me go forward a little bit and see if I can show you a female's horns, and then finally we'll try and show you how impressive these males' horns are. And they get hard, they start to ossify at around about 9 years of age. So these big bulls that you get with these massively developed horns are around about 9 years old. There's one over there, you can see him. That is a prime bull. See how much more well developed his horns are. And as they get older, those rough patches on the top of his horn, on his boss, will actually start to flatten out and will get polished. So bulls older than 10 years have like this polished look, and then old bulls, their horns can sometimes break off with the way that they're fighting with one another. Now, he's not a particularly big bull, but I would say from the outside curve of his horn to the other outside curve of his horn is probably about just over half a meter. They're a lot bigger than what you think they are. I once tried to fit a pair of buffalo horns into a compact SUV, and I couldn't actually get them into the trunk, into the boot. Just make life a bit easier over here for Brian, who's trying desperately to try and film this one. You can see that these horns are quite small. Not very big at all. Young bull, they're called green horns. That's when the horns are not ossified, they're not hard. Compared to that bull that we've just seen in his prime with these hard horns. And then for those of you who watch the Djuma dam cam religiously, the buffalo that you see in there, those buffalo that you've got with that lie up in the pan there, those guys are all old guys. They all carry massive horns. They do fight with their horns, very similar to the bison and yaks, buffalo all over the place. Ooh. So the sun coming out, it is cooking. You're also getting hot, bro. Ah, wattled starling with their wattle. Now look at the male there, Brian, if you can get in through the gap over there. That bird that you can see there. Sorry, get forward a little bit. Anyway, they're going to fly over. Wattled starling. Have a look at this. That's a youngster. He's less than a year old. They are pregnant for 1 year, just over 11 months, just under 12 months. They have one baby at a time, and that baby is now approaching a year. You probably find that that female is pregnant. Gonna drink a little bit. Here comes an old female. That's the one that you were just on, coming out from the left. Lots of buffalo. Alright, we're going to go around the corner and see if we can get in front of these buffalo, and while we do that, we're going to be moving you on to Jamie, who I'm sure would love to say hello and tell you what she's up to. So we're going to see if we can reposition before they cross our boundary, and we'll catch up with you in a little bit.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I'm speaking fairly softly. I just wanted to show you this little steenbok. I was hoping it might stick around, and it has. And what a wonderful afternoon feeling this afternoon feels like. It is so nice and damp. Such a relief after the drought weather that we've been having. All right, girl. Okay, little girl. And I bet for these animals, it must feel incredible to be wandering around with a little bit of extra moisture in the air. I think she's pregnant as well. And I mean, I'm not intending to find every pregnant antelope species on Djuma, but I seem to be doing it. Sorry. We are actually on Arathusa. This afternoon we've come across to see if we can catch up with Shadow, but I've been distracted by this little steenbok. She's definitely pregnant. You can see that bulge around her stomach. Also notice that her nipples are also a bit enlarged. She could well be very close as well. Come on, little girl. And then come out. Definitely one of my favorite antelope species. Those huge eyes make for a very attractive little face. And they're also such mysterious creatures. The only antelope species that covers up its dung in this area, and still nobody really knows why they do it, but they scrape soil over it like a cat does in a sandbox. She's munching away at the forbs on the ground. She's been very obliging. Thank you, girl. You can see how she disappears into the bush as we move out. Well, good afternoon. My name is Jamie. I have VM on camera with me. Sorry about the frantic hand movements there, but a fly sort of flew up my nose and then into my eyeball in very quick succession. And as practiced as I would like to be at avoiding or ignoring flies, I haven't quite got the technique down. It's something that Scott Dyson has perfected, or at least come close to perfecting. Okie, well, we'll go and investigate the rest of the Arathusa drainage lines, and Steph's buffalo are busy disappearing over the boundary, so let's hop over there.
And that's the tail end of the last few buffalo from this herd that is busy moving across. There's like a splinter group of buffalo that should come across in the next couple of minutes, probably numbering anywhere from 10 to about 12 or 13 individuals. But these are the last few that have crossed over into Buffelshoek. And unless they get chased back to us, we'll continue on their ramblings. Buffalo, they wander within a home range. They don't just wander aimlessly on forever into any given area. They have a home range, and that home range is defined by smell, I should say. And the pathfinders will use that smell to go to places where they haven't been in a while. So there we go. Gone. 400 buffalo disappeared just like that. Boom. So the smell of this particular herd will be all over their territory, and they will move in that territory. It's not a territory because they don't defend it. It's called a home range. And can be quite big, you know, from there's two really large herds of buffalo in the Sabi Sand, so in 60,000 hectares. So here's the splinter group coming through. So we should get a few more buffalo coming over, and they'll just be these ones. There are quite a few big bulls in this particular group. Good afternoon, Kim. You've asked if buffalo have babies at the same time of year. Now, buffalo can have babies at any time of the year, but you do find there are more buffalo babies born during the summer months. So there'll be an increase in buffalo babies born in the summer months. Have a look at this big grizzled old guy. He's what we call a prime bull. He'd be one of the mating bulls in this particular herd. And there will be a couple of prime bulls, and they will almost gang up on a female that comes into estrus. They are heavily competitive with one another for females. Have a look how magnificent he looks. You can see that he's almost bigger in body than what the ones that we see lying at the dam are, and that's because he's a mating bull. He will be hanging around with this herd so that he can get his genes into the gene pool. The ones that we see hanging around at the dam every single day are the bulls that are almost past prime. He is what we call a prime bull. Have a look at that. Magnificent. 800 kilograms of just awesome buffalo-ness. And that's pretty much at the weight that they top out at. So looking at about 1,600, 1,700 pound. Or 800 kilogram, which is about 300 kilograms or 600 pounds lighter than the water buffalo that you get. And I'm sure it's also a little bit lighter than your American bison. From what I've read about American bison, they get to about 1,000 kilograms, the big males, about 2,000 pounds. Last few, also two bulls. No, that's a looks like a female, judging from her horns actually. Tough to say. The back one is a bull, the front one is a cow. Yes, so that one with the big horns in the front was actually a cow, followed by her calf, and then another female who's just stopping in the road, having a quick look at us, posing for a screenshot. Followed by another cow and a bull, probably a calf of hers. Now, I said that buffalo herds are made up of factions. This is probably one of those factions. It's a family group that would have just been tailing the rest of the main herd of buffalo. And it's not to say that they won't split off from time to time. They will absolutely split off from time to time. But what they won't do is leave the herd's home range. So the herd's home range is where they are. This particular herd lives here in the northern Sabi Sands. And I'm sure it actually goes into the Manyeleti from time to time. But we have another larger herd, probably about another 200 or 300 individuals more than what this is. That is in the southern part of this reserve, about 20 kilometers away. And their home ranges are quite large. You're looking at about 450 to 600 square kilometers per herd. And yes, they will have some overlap. But they are not territories because they are not defended. That was just me clapping. Of course, with the sun coming out after some rain and then being in attendance of the buffalo herd, I am a magnet for flies. And that was that. So this was the splinter group. Let's see if we can see them from behind one last time. I don't quite know when we're going to be seeing buffalo again. Seeing big herds of buffalo like this is actually quite rare. We see them probably only once or twice a month. I've seen only pictures of a Texas Longhorn. Laura has asked if I've seen a Texas Longhorn and how do their horns compare to buffalo. I think the Texas Longhorn steer is actually a much bigger in terms of length than what the buffalo are. But being domesticated, Laura, I must be honest with you that they will never compete against one of these guys. Very similar to, I think, a Longhorn steer would battle to compete against one of your buffalo, your bison. They just sort of, they're domesticated. They were bred for a purpose and have lost certain things along the way. I know not all domesticated cattle are unaggressive, but they may lack the social sophistication of these wild bovids. And that's it. We've been able to say goodbye to those buffalo. Myself and Brian are going to carry on up with the road and seeing what else we can find after the rain. And Jamie has some waterbuck to show you. So we'll catch up with you in a little bit. Don't go anywhere.
We're here with a creature that's definitely going to have been reveling in the weather over the last few hours, even though the sun has started to bake down once again. This magnificent waterbuck bull that is truly dignified and spectacular to behold, but also incredibly smelly. We're sitting directly, or almost directly, downwind of him, and there's actually two of them, and they really do smell, and the smell is even more pronounced now that they're a little bit damp. They've obviously been standing in the rain, and they carry a very musky, very wet dog scent to them that is far more pronounced now that they're a bit damp. You can see the scruffiness of their fur. Oh, he's two really mature and magnificent waterbuck bulls. You can see how in weight they are one of the biggest antelope species that we see regularly on these safari drives. Bulky and quite, what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't say squat, but they're much more solid. Stocky, thank you very much, VM. That is exactly what I meant. They are stocky antelope when you compare them to an antelope of a similar height like a kudu. Thank goodness I have VM on board to think for me, because my brain hasn't really been working as it should be. And our waterbuck bulls are disappearing off behind some quite dense vegetation. And I think I'm going to let them move off. We're very close to, or we're coming up close to the drainage lines around the Arathusa Dam. And while we make our way down, or having just been sitting in that sighting, Chad has mentioned that the birds this afternoon are sounding so happy. And I've definitely noticed that as well. I was watching, as the rain was pouring down at about 2 o'clock this afternoon, I was watching a pair of kingfishers, a pair of woodlands kingfishers outside. And even though they were totally drenched and covered, I mean, they were soaking wet, and the rain was pouring down, and the two of them were sitting there doing that wonderful chirping, whistling sound with their wings open and doing their whole mating display. And it was almost like they were doing a little bit of a rain dance. They were so thrilled to see moisture back coming from the skies again. It's been wonderful to see. It might not be... is that what's happening? That's where the sound was coming from. We were trying to think about the clunking, and I think that in the process of changing flat tires this morning, we may not have fully tightened the wheel nuts, and the wheel was about to come off. Luckily VM spotted it. I heard thunking. I was about to get out and investigate. I just said we'd chat a bit about the waterbuck before we carried on and had another double check. So while I double check that all of our wheel nuts are tightened, whoopsie daisy, we'll pop over to Steph, but don't mention to Steph what we're doing.
All right, we've got some birds having a bit of a fight here. I'm sure for some nesting space. We've got two rollers, three rollers in actual fact. And I don't know if they're going to be doing their display. They might do. There's one that's going to definitely do the display. Let's see if we can get him going forward. We're just going to move forward a little bit. And then it's going to be testimony to Brian's skill to see if he can actually keep this roller. For those of you who don't know why rollers get their names, this bird was absolutely going to show you why in a little bit, if he stays around. This is the lilac-breasted roller. Let's see if he makes a circle. And he goes and rolls behind us. Of course, that's exactly what he's going to do. Now, Jamie is fixing a tire. Now, it happens from time to time that we get problems with the tires. That is a magnificent spot for Brian, actually. That is another lilac-breasted roller. And it looks like a youngster. Well, I'm taking my time to identify these birds is that this time of year you actually get European rollers as well that'll go and compete for nesting space with these birds. And I'm just making sure that there are in fact lilac-breasted rollers and not European rollers, because they don't have their tail streamers anymore. The European rollers have finished. I mean, the lilac-breasted rollers have at least finished their breeding, and so their tail streamers have fallen out. Some beautiful birds in actual fact. And right now, where we are sitting, there's just a lot of birds around. This little patch of bush we've got in front of us is home to probably about 4 or 5 different birds at the moment, different species of birds. I have a thought that they're actually here because of termites that are busy emerging. We might actually do a new bird species. Yeah, Brian is going to just get himself ready over here. Oh no, fork-tailed drongos. I thought we had ant-eating chat, but they are a pair of fork-tailed drongo. The reason I know that is a pitch-black bird with a forked tail of around about that size and shape. Now we've got a car coming along the road. We're going to have to pull off of the road slightly to let him pass. I am going to move the car a little bit. We were creating a significant traffic jam. These rollers are still going in. Cloudscape has asked if we get purple rollers here, and we absolutely do. Staff, coming company. We absolutely do get purple rollers here. They're not as common as the lilac-breasted or the European roller, but we definitely do get purple rollers here. Let's go forward a little bit past this termite mound and see if there's anything in the tree worth having a look at, and then we're going to wing it straight through this drainage line that we got in front of us. This drainage line over here is notoriously bad signal. So while Jamie is looking after a car and you are stuck with me, you're just going to have to bear with me while we race through here quickly. Might get a little bit shaky on the other side, but it literally will be a second. Signal should be getting better. There we go. Signal should be fine right about now, so you're back with me again. And what I'm doing is I'm doing a bit of a patrol of the boundaries so that we can have some time to see if anything has walked across our boundary through the afternoon. It's been a pretty cool day today. It hasn't really picked up much in temperature from this morning at all. It was a little bit hot just now when Brian and I were sitting in the sun with those buffalo, but that's about the hottest it's been the whole day. And because of that, animals will move, especially leopard and cheetah will move throughout the day. And it's at these bizarre times that you can pick up their tracks. When everything's nice and fresh, it's been washed clean, so their tracks should stick out. If Arathusa around. Now we went past the Djuma Dam a little bit earlier, and even though the rain was bucketing down for about 40 minutes, it actually made no noticeable difference to the dam at all. It did bleach those catfish skulls a little bit shinier, but it didn't do much else, unfortunately. Amelia, good afternoon. You're a brand new viewer to Wild Earth, and I just want to say a warm welcome to the show. You wanted to know where we are, and Amelia, we're in South Africa. We are on the eastern side of South Africa. We are directly east of Johannesburg. If you can find Johannesburg and you take a ruler and you go straight east from Johannesburg, you will find a game reserve called the Kruger National Park. We're on the western side of the Kruger National Park, about halfway up the Kruger National Park. And we are inside a private game reserve called the Sabi Sand Wildtuin, which is a collection of privately owned land adjacent to the park. And one of the game reserves inside that collection is called Djuma. And we are on Djuma Private Game Reserve right now. We traverse, or we drive around in Djuma and Arathusa private game reserves, the two adjacent lying game reserves to one another. And our area that we can traverse is roughly 3,000 acres, so a fairly sizable chunk of land. And that is where we are bringing the show to you from right now. I hope that answered your question, and I hope to see you asking us many more questions over the next coming months and years. Now I'm coming to have a look at Buffelshoek Dam. Not that I'm expecting to see knee-deep water, to be honest with you. I'm not expecting to see any water in it after the rain that we've had. But just out of habit, I think, more than anything else. Hi Roy, you've asked me what the most common species of bird is in this area. Roy, the most common species of bird that you find in Africa is the red-billed quelea, and we do get the red-billed quelea here. That said, it is restricted to areas just outside of Djuma's territory. So although we do see red-billed quelea here, it's not the bird that we see most frequently. I would say that the bird we see most frequently here year-round would probably be the drongo, the fork-tailed drongo, any one of the sparrows, a couple of weavers, and definitely the long-tailed starling and the glossy starlings would be the birds that we most commonly see here. Now, as I quite correctly it would seem, yes, there's not much going on over here. There's a little puddle, that's about it for the water that is at Buffelshoek Dam. Can you believe it? First time, I think, if I'm correct, first time in Wild Earth's history, and that's a long time, that this dam has dried up. But it will give you some perspective on, and this is what I do suggest all of our long-time viewers who have somewhere with today's date, and definitely contrast it to a wet year one year when you're going to be able to see how full this dam actually gets, and you'll be very, very surprised at what the bush looks like, how it changes, how deep this actually gets throughout the year. And you'll find it quite hard to imagine that it can get this dry again. equally so when it's full and it's green and it's lush and there are puddles everywhere. You can't understand how it can get as dry as it does, but it does, and that's the way things are. It's actually, it's exactly that. It's the way things are, it's the way they should be. So I think we'll ask Brian to give you a nice screenshot. I'll leave it in Brian's capable hands to compose it perfectly for you. I'll let you know when he says everything's okay. He's just traversing it to see what he wants to do.
I'll do a panorama so people can take a whole.
Brian has suggested that you do a bit of a panorama so that you can get more than one shot. And when he's ready, I'll say ready. You can either film it or take a series of screenshots, however you feel like doing. Brian is ready, and on the count of 3, 3, 2, 1, and there we go. Remembering you need to put a date to it. And what's quite nice is that there's clouds in the background, so on a wet year, there's every expectation that there'll be a similar sky. Only the vista that you're going to get from that will be very, very different. We'll stop it on the dam wall, because if I have to get my head in shot, that absolutely won't get any fuller of hair than what it already is, no matter how much rain waters my scalp. And you absolutely do. Well, I suppose it'll be a nice constant. Give you something to laugh about in years to come. Alrighty, not much happening over here. I think we're going to carry on going. And I think we're going to send you over to Jamie. The signal gets a bit iffy here as we go through this dip. So we're going to go over to Jamie. Brian and I are going to carry on driving and see if we can find anything interesting for you. And we'll catch up with you in a bit.
Happy to know that we are all good. The tire is still very much in place on the vehicle, no harm done. We just had to do a couple of quick fixes in order to get that tire to really be solidly back on the vehicle. All sorted now though, we're back up and running, and a big thanks to the wildebeest for his help as well in sorting, first of all spotting that problem, and second of all sorting it out. It's an important lesson that in not ignoring the sounds that you hear and putting off double checking what they are before you carry on. I should have investigated that noise earlier.
It's a Land Rover.
That's very true. Liam's response to that was, in all fairness, it is a Land Rover. It does come with a cacophony of individualized noises. Each vehicle has its own little clunks and thunks. Hello, everyone. And while we look at this little terrapin head poking itself out, it's amazing. I've mentioned this before. It's about close to, I would say, it's less than 3 hours since our first big rains, and already the water puddles around the roads are filled with terrapins. Do not ask me how that happens. I mean, I know they move there, they walk there. They must come out of eastivation. I think they must be eastivating, or certain ones must be. But the fact that they suddenly find themselves in puddles as quickly as they do is something that always absolutely astounds me. Believe it or not, that is a terrapin head that you're looking at. It's quite a tiny terrapin, but a terrapin head nonetheless. Come on, little one, are you going to sit in the middle there? Yes. Word of advice: if you ever see a terrapin sitting in a puddle in the middle of the road, first of all, drive slowly through every puddle that you see, because you never know where there's a terrapin in it if you're out here, especially if you're visiting somewhere like Kruger. If you see puddles in the road, go through very slowly, and chances are that thing will be able to surf the wave of your vehicle moving past it. not get squidged or run over. But also, another word of advice, don't be tempted to go and grab one and move it out of a puddle so that you can drive past. That is very ill-advised. First of all, you should really be out of your vehicle in certain places. It is not allowed in most of the national parks, but also they are incredibly smelly. They bite and they secrete the most phenomenally smelly, it's like the worst fish oil you could possibly imagine. It's one of their defense mechanisms. It absolutely stinks. They release it from the storage organ, the bursa, much in the way tortoises do, but tortoises is not nearly as bad as a terrapin smell. So just be aware of that. Don't go grabbing terrapins. It's a very bad idea. And in terms of dispensing advice, Charlotte, who's watching in PE, Charlotte, that is wonderful news to hear that you are going across to start your training in the Sabi in the next few weeks. Now, you've mentioned that you think 6 weeks will be tough, but worth it. Absolutely, it's always worth it. And I promise you, those 6 weeks fly by. And there will be times when you are beyond exhausted. And getting up in the morning is an exhausting prospect, but getting out of bed is so easy to do because you're just excited about what new prospects the days will bring. Those 6 weeks fly by. And as guides, we're actually very lucky in terms of our leave cycles. We get a lot of leave throughout the year. That's of course because pretty much everywhere that you guide, you're going to work 7 days a week for those 6 weeks. There's no such things as weekends out in the bush. There's certainly no such things as public holidays. And in fact, those are the best time for the lodges because they're the busiest. Charlotte, I'm thrilled to hear that. And I certainly wish you all the best. And in the time before you head out, if you want any advice from any of us, just let us know. I'm sure all of the presenters would be very keen to answer any of the questions that you have. And you might even find yourself starting with a bit of an advantage in terms of the stuff that you've picked up and learned from our live safari drives. That is really, truly wonderful news. And we look forward to having you in the area, not quite in the northern Sabi Sands, but still in this area. Very exciting stuff. Since I'm currently on a roll with dispensing advice, don't go swimming in any dams, even if you haven't seen any crocodiles in them. And Alan, you were wondering where they go during the drought. Crocodiles are incredible. They can move enormous distances, especially overnight when it's slightly cooler. They generally don't go wandering about in the hottest time of the day because as reptiles, they can overheat very quickly. But Alan, they move between dams and rivers. So although we've had a really serious drought and we've really lost most of our dams, as you saw with Buffelshoek Dam, not lost, they've just dried out temporarily. That doesn't mean that everywhere within this open area has lost their water supply. So there's still flowing rivers that the crops will move to, and they can easily cover kilometers at a time. And also the other difficult thing is that you can't fence a river. So if crocodiles want to get out around rivers, they can, and they do. And they do move out of the fenced areas and across to, for example, the Glide River system, which is the third largest canyon in the world and the largest green canyon. A really beautiful place. I would suggest if you ever come and visit this area, that would be one of the places to go and see. But a lot of crocodiles tend to move across to those dams, those huge dams. For the younger ones though, that's for the larger crocodiles. For the younger ones though, these droughts spell disaster. Already crocodiles have a very, very high mortality rate for their hatchlings, and I think the statistic is something around the region of 1 in 50 maybe might make it to adulthood and to those very large crocs that you see on television. For the most part, the little hatchlings that hatch about this size tend to be killed off by either other crocodiles, things like marabou storks, even legavans or rock monitor lizards will eat baby crocodiles. So they've got lots and lots of enemies out there. But with the drought, with limited water, it means that they become more concentrated, they become easier to pick out of the dams and the rivers. And they're also not capable of covering such enormous distances as the adults are. But that's why I say don't swim in dams in South Africa unless you're absolutely certain that they are safe. Because crocodiles come from far and wide, and one day one might just appear. I've experienced that a few times with large crocodiles that have just wound up in a dam overnight. The place where I trained was a very good example of that. There was a big dam out in front of the huts. We'd go wandering around. We used to go and catch frogs so that we could identify them. And frogging adventures until somebody spotted a very large crocodile in that dam, and that very quickly put an end to our frog and toad nightly adventures in the dam. And speaking of dams, I'm making my way slowly towards the Arathusa dam. I just want to see if it's been supplemented at any point. I'm also always, when I'm in this area, keeping a very sharp eye out for shadow. It's been a long time since I've seen that leopard. I'm very keen to have a look at her and see how she's doing. And Pamela, I mentioned I was searching for shadow, but Pamela would like to know if we've got any chance of seeing wild dogs. The wonderful thing about wild dogs is that there is always a chance of seeing them. They cover such enormous distances, particularly on days like today where it's really not that hot. They could well have been far more mobile than we have seen them over the last few weeks. Pamela, the last I heard, the wild dog pack that we were following moved into Londolozi, but that was 2 days ago, which in wild dog terms means nothing. They could be here, we could find them around the next corner. And we could find them without anybody even realizing that they're in the area. And the reason behind that is the rain has washed away all the tracks. And the roads have become solid again, tracking's become tricky again. So there's a very good chance that people might have driven past them or over their tracks without even realizing it. I could have driven over their tracks without realizing it. As I said, Pamela, you just never know what you're going to find around the next corner. And I think it's time for us to head over to Steph so we can see what he's been up to.
Oh, welcome back with us. And myself and Brian have been having a very interesting chat along here, peppered with a few birds that we don't usually see. We've just seen a cinnamon-breasted bunting, and I'd love for us to try and just idle down this road and see if we can see something new. I haven't seen a cinnamon-breasted bunting in what feels like years, to be honest with you, and it's usually because they are hidden in long grass. You don't get to see them. But now there just seems to be a freshness in the air with this rain, and it's given us, Gracie, who's only 8 years old, the other day with James wanted to see a cinnamon bird, and obviously it was quite tough. They're quite tough birds to see, to be honest with you. They're not common, but they're quite tough to see. You actually got to try and focus on these little birds, and for even someone as skilled as Brian, VM, and Tebs, and Gendre, it is very difficult to try and focus on something that's moving what feels like close to the speed of light. and jumping out of the frame all the time. So I have no doubt that it's going to be a challenge to try and get one. And of course, because I want to show you a bird, there is no sign of life on this road. There we go. Alrighty, let's see if it is our cinnamon-breasted bunting before I go and, yes, okay, we got your cinnamon bird. There we go. Oh no, it was in the way. There we go. Yeah, okay, he's sitting on the edge of that stump there, Brian. Let me just reverse quickly. There you go, Brian. Have you got a clear shot through there? Ah, there he goes. We'll have my head was in the way, that was the first one, and second one, branches were in the way. We'll have to try again, but that was definitely a cinnamon bird, or cinnamon-breasted bunting. Not as quick on the draw over here. I don't get as much practice as the other guys do. Sorry, Brian. And sorry for the sickening lurch from side to side in the screen over there with all this, me not quite getting all my stuff together. But that's the second one that we've seen on this road, so it's just a question of keeping our eyes peeled and we'll get another one. Avi, you've asked me if I could invent a bush holiday, what would it entail and what would I call it? It's quite an intense question for someone who's just been washed clear of rain and trying to find a cinnamon-breasted bunting. Let me give it some thought while we're busy driving around here. Let's see if we can intersperse it with something, and I'll give it a thought. But I immediately want to brush to or jump to something that entails a desert, something that entails the bush, and something that entails an island, a tropical island of some sort. I think if I could, and of course money being no object, if I were to go somewhere, I'd choose somewhere where I haven't been before. I would love to go for my desert holiday. I would love to go to the beaches at the mouth of the Kunene River between Angola and Namibia. I'd love to go and track desert lion on the beaches of far northern Namibia. So that would be my desert part. My bush part would have to be, it's a good question. It would have to be in Zimbabwe. I think I would love to go and visit the bush in southern Zimbabwe, just north of Arathusa National Park, either there or in the Selous National Park of Tanzania. Those are grey hornbill that Brian is very successfully keeping his eye on while I ramble on about stuff that is absolutely got nothing to do with what you're watching. So it would either be three places. It would be Gabon, only because Brent Leo Smith has managed to talk me into wanting to go and visit a rainforest, even though he, for as much times as he's singing the praises of it, he's also telling me how disgusting it was with the heat, the rain, and the insects. But I'd love to go and see one of those forest elephant. Or it would be the Selous Game Reserve in southern Tanzania, or it would be in southern Zimbabwe, just north of the Arathusa National Park. So those are the three bush places that I would pick. I'd have to pick one of them. And then the island, it would be any tropical island. I've never gone to a tropical island in my life. I have these visions of just clouds of fish everywhere over colored reefs, and I'd love to just go and see anywhere I can do that. So that's what I choose as my bush holiday. All places, obviously all as wild as what they can be, and as unspoiled as what they can be as well. Hopefully that answered your question. Alrighty, onward to try and find a cinnamon-breasted bunting. We've got some beautiful clouds busy building up. Let's see if Brian can show you these clouds. massively towering clouds. Now those clouds are actually growing over a mountain range called the Lobombos and mark the eastern edge of the low veld. The low veld lies between two high pieces of ground, one being the Drakensberg mountain range and the other being the Lobombo mountain range. And what you're looking at there is where the Lobombo mountain range is. It's probably about 100 kilometers from edge to edge at its widest point. Lobombos mark the southernmost mountain range of the African Rift Valley Fault. I'm saying a lot of things over here that people have heard in very different places, and not really connecting it possibly where we are on the southern.
Oopsie daisy, we appear to have lost Steph there. We apologize for the gremlins that appear to be attacking poor old Rusty at the moment. We thought it was the weather, but I don't think so anymore. We've got nice clear skies, although I'm still keeping my fingers crossed that it's going to rain a bit more later this evening. Just for an update on my side, Pamela, you were wondering about the wild dogs. The guides have found them, not on Arathusa though. It sounds as though they are on Elephant Plains, but I'm still listening carefully to see if maybe they decide to come across onto Arathusa. So they're just to the west of our boundary, as to where we are allowed to wander around. So Pamela, yes, there is a very good chance we could see the wild dogs this afternoon. I'm going to keep listening to hear which direction they decide to go in. Oh, sorry, just listening to the update now. It's tracks they've found, not the wild dogs themselves. But I will keep you updated as soon as I know what's happening on that side of the world. Oh, that's a nice big tortoise. He's moving away from us, so we'll just get a nice view of him. As most of our regular viewers know, we won't be increasing any pressure on these environments by, sorry, that was my fault, taking the foot off the brake, by off-roading in any way. So we won't follow him. He's a nice big leopard tortoise. I love tortoises. I love the way they move. There is something so comical about their legs. Surprisingly fast for an animal that's meant to be very slow. And you can see the knobbles, the sort of different plates crisscrossing his shell. Now this tortoise could be up to, I would say he's easily over 20 years old as a size like this. And as a leopard tortoise, it's the biggest species that we get out here. It's also the most widely distributed. And it's amazing how fast, having chatted a bit about the terrapins, it's amazing how fast the tortoises come out to play as well after rain. They've all been hiding in secret places under logs, covered in leaf litter. And it's incredible to see how fast they get active again. Oh wow. I managed to get up over that log. I'm actually quite impressed. That's impressive. That's quite a high log considering how short his legs are. Well done, little one. At the moment, I think he's looking for shade. The sun's come out and it's started to beat down. It's become incredibly warm. And Gerda, you chatted a little bit about how happy the birds sound. And I don't know if you were listening while we were with that leopard tortoise, but that was a crested barbet that was calling, that trill sound that we were hearing. Of course, now that I've spoken about him, he's gone quiet. But that was the crested barbet And the interesting thing about crested barbets is that they can do what's known as circular breathing. So they've got two pipes that lead down to their lungs. In one they can breathe in, the other they breathe out, and they make that trill sound. And it means that they can keep trilling and calling much longer than they would be able to if on just one lung full of air. There's so many wonderful little facts about the different bird species out here. I always find them fascinating. They're also our eyes in the sky and always useful as a warning system if there's something like a leopard wandering around. I've mentioned that this brief downpour that we had is wonderful, but it's not enough to fill the dams, and it's not really enough, if I'm completely honest, to really start counteracting the effects of this drought. And Kathy, you were wondering how long it would have to start that sentence again. How long it would have to rain for and how much rain would have to pour down in order to really start to fill up the dams again. Bearing in mind, of course, that when we think of them being nice and full, and I know a lot of the regular viewers have shared pictures of, for example, what the Boyatella Dam looked like this time last year, completely full all the way up to the lodge. When we talk about filling dams, we mean in a way that can actually be sustained and continue to hold water all the way through our dry season until the next rainy period. Now, Kathy, what would go a long way in counteracting the effects, usually at this time of year, in my experience, in the last 4 years that I've lived here, right up until this point, every rainy season, there'll be an extended rainy period, and I'm not talking about us needing 100 mils in a day, because that's going to have disastrous effects on the ecosystem. I'm talking about having something in the region of maybe 15 mils a day, and just a constant drizzle all day and for 2 weeks solid. And it's been my experience that usually happens around this time of year. That you get a sort of a 2 week, 3 week period where it pretty much doesn't stop raining. And there's more rain there, I'm excited to say. I've been exceptionally cynical of the false warnings that the clouds have been bringing over the last few days, but today I'm feeling very optimistic. I think there's more rain on its way. It might not be enough to completely counteract the effects of the drought, but it will certainly go a long way in helping the animals out and giving them that little boost of survival they need. I mentioned earlier, chatting a bit about the rainy effects and the creatures that it brings out, with that big leopard tortoise. I mentioned that it was the largest species of tortoise that we get in this area. And Riley, who's one of our 13-year-old viewers, you want to know how big that tortoise can get. Now Riley, I've heard a story that the biggest leopard tortoise found was somewhere in the region of 70 kilograms. That's enormous. That is an exception to every rule. That puts it at about 140 kilograms and bigger than me. Or was it? No, that doesn't sound right. Hold on, that's bigger. That's a leopard tortoise that's larger than I am. That cannot be right. I must have got that number wrong. But Riley, they do get really large in size, probably about 70 pounds, up to 30 kilograms. It was 70 pounds, that was right. And they do get really, really big. And speaking of leopard tortoises, Steph has found another one to show you.
And look what we found you. We found you an enormous leopard tortoise, as Brian shouted at me while we were driving along. And he really is a beautiful specimen, and the rain has absolutely showered him clean. or her. I don't quite know what this one is. It's quite difficult to see without actually having to lift them up. I will gather that I'm going to say she's a she, as she lacks the spurs that are typical of male tortoises. They use a spur underneath their chin to fight with one another and try and turn each other on their back. Now, the leopard tortoise is the largest species of tortoise that we find out here. And what a lot of people don't realize is that leopard tortoises, that shell is made up of their bones, their collarbone or clavicles, their shoulder blades or scapulars, their pelvises, their breastbones. And those bones have now come to the outside with a scale on. That's what you're looking at there. And attached to the inside is their bones, their legs, their 4 legs, their vertebra or their neck vertebra, and then their spines is fused to the inside of the top of the shell. So it's not contrary to popular belief, and this is primarily just for the younger viewers that we have watching today. They can't climb out of their shells. The shell is part of them. And this is what we in South Africa call a tortoise. In other parts of the world, they're referred to as turtles. We call them tortoises. Turtles in South Africa and Africa are marine-based. They swim. Have a look. He's busy having some grass. Awesome. So Pamela has asked me how much they weigh. It depends on the size, but this is a fairly large one. They probably get to about double this one's size, but that's exceptionally rare to see. I've only once or twice ever seen tortoises that are double the size. This is a fairly common large-sized leopard tortoise, and probably weighs in the region of about 2 to 3 kilograms, or about 5 to 6 pounds. Fully capable of swimming, believe it or not. They are buoyant and can swim, and do often swim, not across raging torrents, but definitely across streams. And this tortoise now is eating a forb. I was lucky enough growing up to have a tortoise as a pet, and my tortoise used to eat anything and everything. Used to love grass, but also used to love eating strawberries and lettuce, beetroot and carrots, lots of apples, anything that was green that I could possibly feed my tortoise used to eat. So I can only imagine that this tortoise is very similar. And it's actually amazing how dexterous they are and how fast they can move. A lot of us think tortoises are clumsy and can't really do much, but let me tell you, they can crack on when they need to. Have quite a horny beak, no teeth, quite a lot of saliva. They are cold-blooded, so they cannot regulate their own temperature, their own body temperature. They use the environment to regulate their temperature for them, and so are only really active when it gets warm. And when it gets too warm, they have to stop. When they need to digest a belly full of food, they have to come out into the sun. When they want to slow things down because they are overheating, they don't sweat like we do. They have to move out of the sun. But that makes them incredibly hardy. Tim, tortoises will eat grass when they can. My tortoise used to eat, about half of his diet was grass, and the other half of his diet was made up of anything else that was a plant in my garden. And I'm literally just using that as an example, just one example in my life, an observation. And I would say that that's probably very similar to this tortoise. I would say that half its diet would be grass when there's grass available. At the moment, there's no grass whatsoever. But when grass is not available, or as an additional food resource, they will use anything that's green. It's actually phenomenal to see. They look so clumsy. You almost pity them when you see them, to be quite honest, but they are really hardcore little things, and they occur in the most unbelievable environments. I think the only places where they don't occur is in very cold areas and in true forests where the sun doesn't reach the floor canopy. Obviously, they battle to regulate their body temperatures there. But in these temperate zones, tortoises are fairly common. Here we find 3 different species of tortoise, the leopard tortoise and 2 different types of hinged tortoises. And then we also find terrapins, which are freshwater turtles. And then we've got a whole host of marine turtles as well. So it's actually quite a rich diversity of chelonids, as they are called, of the tortoises, terrapins, and turtles. The bright shiny new shell, or not new, but a bright shiny washed shell. And there she decides she didn't enjoy all the attention and she's going to move off. Brian, at the top of this dead leadwood is a grey hornbill that's busy doing, or not leadwood, excuse me, dead knobthorn. There's a grey hornbill that's busy singing. Now, for those of you who enjoy shades of grey in your colour palette at home, this bird is one of the most wonderful colour palettes of grey on it that I've ever seen. It's a grey hornbill doing his little dance, sitting at the top of a tree doing his dance so that he gets seen the most. Isn't the biggest hornbill, not the biggest male hornbill at least, that you can see? And we have got a question, a remarkable question from young Ethan, who's only 6 years old. Can you believe? Ethan, you wanted to know how birds thermoregulate is the word you were looking for. I'm sure you'll learn that in years to come, but you used, how do birds keep hot or cold? It's called thermoregulation. And Ethan, they use a variety of different ways. Obviously, they are quite small animals, and so they lose heat to the environment. They are warm-blooded, so they create heat from metabolic actions. And they lose heat through the environment, which means they've got a pretty hardcore metabolism. They've got to keep on generating a lot of energy to keep themselves warm. So when they get too hot, they lose heat through the environment, but when it is hot outside and they're not losing it as much, they employ a whole variety of different ways. The most common way is to pant. They open up their beaks and they pass air quite rapidly over their throat, keeping their throat quite moist, and the evaporation in their throat as the air passes over their throat and dries up the water and dries up their saliva, cools them down. Larger birds that don't work too much or too well even practice a thing called urine washing, where they will defecate on their legs and use the evaporation of the moisture off of their feces and their urea to cool them down. And then they enjoy swimming, to be quite honest. They'll come and cool down and swim, sit in the shade and swim. And that's about all the ones that I know of, to be honest with you. Yeah. I'll rack my brains a little bit more, Ethan, for you, but that's about it. Alrighty, so that's a grey hornbill. Let's carry on going. Let's see what we can find around the corner. We are now without the means to start. So while we have a look at the clouds, or you can have a look at my bald head. There's an eagle coming in. You can have a look at my bald head. We are going to just hold on 2 seconds before we send you through to Jamie so that I can actually start my car and we can go. There's a vulture or an eagle coming through here now. Let's see if we can see what it is. Let's see if you can guess it. It's flying straight towards us, which is making it quite difficult to identify. No colors as yet. There it turns. And that is unmistakable as it turned. Have a look at those aileron feathers And that rocking flight pattern, that fast flap, diagnostic of a battalier eagle. And that was a juvenile, and it is why you didn't see as many colors on it as what you normally see. So that was a juvenile battalier eagle. That shortish tail, those wide splayed ailerons, and that rocking gait that it had is diagnostic of that particular bird. And then that was a juvenile. They get their adult plumage at about 9 years old, 7 to about 9 years old, and that is when they turn that very characteristic black and white color that you see. Amazing afternoon, to be quite honest. I'm sure that Jamie is standing by for us to move over to her, and she's going to be giving you an update, and that will allow myself and Brian to quickly start the car and carry on. So we'll catch up with you in a little bit.
So guys, I've got a surprise for you, but I'm not going to tell you what it is until we get there. First I have to find my way there as well, which also adds an extra complication to the entire equation. But we are on our way somewhere very exciting. We're currently on the Arathusa airstrip, making our way towards a special sighting. I'm not going to tell you anything more than that. We're going to keep it a little bit of a surprise whilst Steph has to start his vehicle. But I just need to spend a bit of time locating these guys. They've pulled it in, but she's somewhere in a block. Oops, gave a bit of it away. Not telling you anything more than that. Let's see if we can get there in time. I'm sorry, I need to listen to the Game Drive channel. Oh, millipede. Okay, I need to concentrate, and this is the Game Drive channel, so I'm going to send you back over to Steph and catch up with her very shortly.
And you're back with us. Jamie needs to contact Arathusa and can only do that on an open radio, which of course we don't want you to have to listen to. We've got our car started again and we are underway. I think let's go all the way to the boundary. I think I'm going to have a look. There's just something about driving a boundary that's quite exciting. It's not to say that something hasn't crossed in the last 48 hours. We can absolutely not cover every single square inch of Djuma. Not even in a week could we do that. And so you never quite know what's around. However, there's just something nice about finding fresh tracks coming into a boundary. It sort of sets the challenge. And of course, with the rain that we had this afternoon, almost every track that we see here is going to be fresh. Derek has asked me a very nice question because it's something that a lot of people get wrong. Where is the Sabi Sands in relation to the Masai Mara? Because a lot of people have actually, in my experience, mixed up the migration that the wildebeest do, which is unique to a certain piece of Africa, and an African holiday that they go on at some point. And where you have the Masai Mara is in Kenya, right in the southern part of Kenya, on the border with Tanzania. And we are in South Africa, right at the tip of South Africa, and we're on the eastern side of South Africa. As the bird flies, or as the crow flies, so they say, we're probably about 5,000 kilometers away from the Masai Mara, a massive distance. Animals from there absolutely are not able to come down here. The distance is just too great. even though you do find some animals that are almost the same. So things like elephant and buffalo and zebra and impala, for instance, are common animals. But you have a whole host of animals that are not common, that are unique to those ecosystems. I hope that answered it, and it's something that I'd love to touch on again at times, so feel free to ask me questions like that. There are some places in this world where 5,000 kilometers is not a big distance, but in Africa it counts for between here and Kenya. Let's see, you've got South Africa, then north of that you've got Zimbabwe, north of Zimbabwe you've got Zambia, north of Zambia you've got Tanzania, north of Tanzania you've got Kenya. So 5 countries away. That's how far the Masai Mara is from here. On the topic of distance and relative distance, Pamela has asked me if I've ever been to the United States, and good afternoon, Pamela. I have. I've toured from coast to coast. As far as I know, your coast to coast is about 6,000 kilometers, so further than it is from here to the Masai Mara, that's for sure. And I have traveled your country. I find it an absolutely beautiful country, and I'd love to come back one day to tour it in a vehicle. I've flown from coast to coast, backwards and forwards, but I've never driven it in a car. And that is one of the things that I left your country with, wanting to drive it, particularly wanting to go from north to south rather than east to west. And probably on your western seaboard, from the Sea of Cortez, zigzagging up the west all the way to Canada, probably ending somewhere around Vancouver, if I could. Absolutely stunning afternoon. Some more buffalo that have headed off in that direction. There's a waterbuck. Stop and have a look at her. Standing beautifully in the late afternoon sun here. There you go. Heart-shaped nose. You may have noticed that slight jump in the picture. That's the camera that we're using at the moment. It has the super zoom function, and we can jump forward, zoom right in on her face. Quite a hairy antelope. Heart-shaped nose. Mule-like appearance. And that is a female waterbuck. One of the more common of the antelope species out here. Definitely one of the more common of the large antelope species. Around about the same size as what she is the wildebeest, the zebra, and the kudu are all around about the same size. Probably around about the 600-pound mark or the 500-pound mark for a really large male. She probably weighs around about 300 pounds, 350 pounds. You'll notice that white, very white ring surrounding her tail. That is a following mechanism for their babies. It's a target the baby aims for. And almost every single animal out here, or every single mammal at least, let me say, out here has a very similar following detail on the back of their rumps. Something that the babies aim for and other members of the same species aim for when they're running through the bush. Here it's called the common waterbuck, although the distribution stops at the Zambezi River. Zambezi is a massive river, one of Africa's great rivers. Although not in its prime anymore, it's a river past its prime, was once a great African river, similar to the Limpopo River, which is actually a super river, up until some continental drift shifted the course of some tributaries to it. Maggie's Maggie's asked the inevitable question: why do we call it waterbuck when they don't seem to be near water ever? Maggie, the answer to that question is that waterbuck will enter water where and when they can if they need to. Unlike most antelope species who try and shy away from water, waterbuck will jump into water, similar to, I suppose, how a lechwe would jump into water to escape predation, to escape predators. They would jump into water quite readily, and must have been to people who were first trying to describe these antelope to the Western world as a defining characteristic.